Good afternoon, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here. And I think I was here for some of the morning session, and I think hearing our speakers for this afternoon as well, I think we are all talking from the same page. So I'm as well, I guess, talking about lifestyle and about, I suppose, exercise and physical activity as part of that. I suppose the talk really is around, I suppose, exercise and the benefit for the brain, but we have to think about, I suppose, the body that the brain is housed in as well. So a lot of the things that I will be talking about in terms of physical activity and exercise, they're about, I suppose, how other body systems actually interact and how that will improve our brain health also. So my aims for today really are to maybe dispel some myths about what exercise is versus physical activity, to show you a little bit of evidence for the benefits of exercise, to really tell you about the recommendations and guidelines for adults, and also here within kind of the local area to highlight where you might be able to go to get some help and what facilities that you can use. But I think my real aim is to convince you that exercise is a wonder drug, and that exercise is medicine in its own right. But as Tim said, it's hard sometimes to motivate yourself. It's hard to actually change those behaviours and to, I suppose, get out of the chair and get out of the house and actually take some exercise. But it is something that's, within all of our own power to do. But I think sometimes that word exercise, it might be a little bit off-putting, because we think of exercise and we think of elite athletes and we think of structured exercise, maybe going to the gym. But any exercise is just one form of a physical activity. So that's what I want to just highlight to you next. So physical activity is just that general movement, which when you move and you contract your muscles, it increases the amount of energy that you expend. And exercise is just a subset of that. It's where physical activity is purposeful. It's where you're actually taking some sort of physical movement in a planned, structured and repetitive way. So we might think that physical activity is walking, but if you're walking with the purpose to improve your heart rate, to get it up a little bit, to improve your breathing, and maybe to make yourself a little bit more resilient and stronger, then that is exercise. And likewise, going to a gym and going to a class or doing some kind of a circuit, or taking part in dance for the purposes of improving your health, that also is exercise. So it's accessible to all of us. And then finally, the other thing I wanted to highlight here was physical fitness. And that really is just about the reserve that you have. You might have heard about cognitive reserve previously. But here, I suppose it's about how well your body is to meet the demands of what you want to do on a daily basis. And that might be your activities of daily living, but it could be your social life and your interaction with your family and friends as well. And sometimes we need a little bit of extra reserve, because sometimes we'll have an extra hill to climb, or we have an extra set of stairs to climb. So we have to be thinking about making sure that we have a good level of physical fitness that will allow us to do the unexpected things as well. This picture here, I suppose, shows us some of the elements of physical fitness. So the first one is strength. So having strength to get out of the chair, having strength to climb the stairs, as well as having strength maybe to open a can or to do your activities at home, strength to do your gardening. So it's not just about rugby players, and it's not just about people in the gym actually lifting weights. The next is our cardiovascular endurance. So this is, I suppose, the system of our lungs and our hearts and our blood vessels, and how when we walk faster or we take sort of a higher intensity physical activity, that our body responds and is able to increase the blood flow and circulate it around our body and also to our brain. Flexibility is something else, and I'm really pleased to see there that Yvonne had all of these items on her slides as well. And flexibility is just, I suppose, where you have the stretch and the ability to get into your body into different positions. Then we have muscular endurance, which is, I suppose, your kind of tolerance for exercise. So, how far can you walk? How long can you stand? And then we're back also then to body composition. And this is where your diet and your food intake and your exercise and your energy output actually have a balance. And then there are other components as well. So there's your balance, which is really important, particularly as we do get older, in terms of ensuring that we don't fall. We have coordination, we have speed of reaction times, even when you think about when you're driving. And then agility, again, is about speed, and power is about the amount of force that you can generate. One other thing I just want to talk to you about is sedentary behavior. And that is really, I suppose, when you're sitting in the chair or when you're lying down and you're not actually creating any movement. And this in its own right is seen to be an independent risk factor for ill health. So actually sitting too long, so any of us who are involved in desk jobs, we're I suppose at risk as well, just by purely being inactive for long periods of the day. So really the message from here is that everyone should try and limit the amount of time that you spend being sedentary, and that there are physical health benefits and indeed brain health benefits for getting up and being more active. So I now have another version of the picture that everybody has seen. And I suppose the only thing to highlight here is that physical activity is one of these modifiable risk factors for dementia. So I'm just going to go on and show you the results from one study. And really it's just the green box at the bottom that I'm kind of focusing in on. So this was a really long-term study over a period of over 20 years, where the researchers looked at people who were enrolled at the beginning and then they followed them through all that period of time. And there were almost 29,000 participants involved. And there's good evidence that moderate to vigorous physical activity was associated with almost 20% reduced dementia risk compared to individuals who had lower levels of physical activity. So the evidence is there from population-based studies that if you're more active in your middle years, and we're back to that again, then your dementia risk will be reduced in later life. This is another graph I just wanted to show you, and it's really just to see the downward decline. So across the bottom, we have the number of steps taken per day. So as the number of steps increase, we see that the risk of death and premature death is decreasing. So there's probably a sweet spot there around 6,000, 7,000, 8,000, 9,000 steps per day. And that's where some of these physical activity guidelines come from. So being more active, being up, taking steps, it actually is good for your longevity. So next, we just want to look a little bit at the body systems that are involved in brain health. And I think this is really like, I suppose, your car. So we all know about our cars. We have the body structure, we have the engine, we have the fuel, we have the tires. We also have a lot of electrics in the car, and all of these things need attention. And they all come together to actually create, I suppose, the functioning machine. And I think mine's a little bit like this at the moment. Maybe I need a bit of an MOT. I think when you think about, I suppose, the fact that we annually have to go and have our car checked, we should always be thinking about getting our health checked as well, and multiple aspects of our health. So within the car, and to use this analogy, I suppose the electrical system, it's like our own nervous system. The engine is like our heart and our lungs and our circulatory system. The fuel are the oxygen and the energy, and also the food that we eat, giving us energy to produce movement and to do all of our daily activities. And then we have the body structure. And here then in our human body, we have the muscles and the skeleton, so the musculoskeletal system. So I'm just going to look at some of these individually then to see how they might actually be involved in brain health. So the nervous system is comprised then of our brain, our spinal cord, and the nerves or the neurons that are distributed all through our body, responsible for our vision, our hearing, our sensation, but also for our voluntary movement and our automatic movement and reflexes, coordination, and our balance. And we've heard earlier on as well, I suppose, how our nervous system is involved in memory, understanding, reasoning, and language. So within the brain, when individuals are getting cognitive impairment and maybe going on towards the development of dementia, there are changes within the brain. You've probably heard about the proteins that accumulate in the brain, and also the changes that occur in the brain with aging of our vascular system, so our blood vessels in the brain. And also that declines the size of certain areas in the brain, like the hippocampus that we heard earlier too. The control of our vision and our hearing is again mediated through our brain. And I guess what I wanted to show you next is then how, even if we are aging and if our brain is aging, we have still got the capacity to actually make new connections and to learn new tasks. So motor learning, and Ian mentioned this as well, is this capacity of the brain to be modified and to be altered by us doing tasks. So a bit like earlier on when we were talking about memory and repetitive tasks assisting with memory, the brain can also help us learn new tasks, so new motor tasks. And this is, I suppose, goes back to childhood when we're learning new skills with repetition and with exploration and being curious about things. These inputs that we get, they cause new connections to grow in our brain, and then we learn new skills. So even in later life and in middle life, it's still never too late to learn something new. And this means that with repetition, with practice, and with experience, and in other words, I suppose, enriching your life as much as we can, that we can create new connections and new wiring. And you can do a lot of that then through physical activity as well. So thinking then about learning a new task, so learning here about catching a ball, it's our muscles in our hands, it's the nerves in our hands, it's communication with our brain, and it's the repetition of that that allows us to actually keep our brains healthy and keep those connections. So for us then, it means that we can learn new skills at any age through practice, and even when there's a brain injury, or maybe when somebody is already suffering from some impairment of their memory, with mild cognitive impairment or any dementias, you can harness this ability to make new connections through movement and feedback and practice. And then we therefore need to keep practicing these tasks because, as I think Marguerite said earlier on, it was use it or lose it. And likewise, for people who do have some cognitive decline, it's important to be physically active, practicing movements so that we can retain them. So next, I just want to go on to the circulatory system. And this, as I said earlier, really is kind of your pump. So the heart being the pump, the lungs bringing you oxygen, the blood vessels delivering that to your brain, and really the fuel to your brain is coming through that system. And just a few facts about, I suppose, the reliance of our brains on oxygen and on blood flow. So it's quite a small organ, it's just fitting in your head, but it consumes up to 15% of the blood flow coming out of your heart. So it's prioritized within the circulation system. So a lot of the blood that your heart pumps out each time goes directly to your brain. And a lot of the oxygen that we have coming in from our lungs is actually transferred to our brain as well. And we know from research that even a single bout of cardiovascular exercise, so exercise that gets your heart rate up and gets you breathing more, will actually increase the blood flow to your brain. And if we continue that for about up to 20 minutes, you can actually see through brain scanning that there are effects in different regions of the brain, including that hippocampus that we heard about earlier, being part of our memory system. And longer term studies have also shown then that with repeated exercise, you can see growth in new blood vessels and actually growth in new nerve connections and an increase in some of those brain regions also with cardiovascular exercise. So I suppose that's my first, key point for you, that exercise is medicine for your brain and getting your heart rate up, getting your blood pumping, and getting more oxygen and more blood flow to your brain. But not alone that, exercise is also important in other aspects of our cardiovascular system and our circulatory system. So exercise has positive benefits for high blood pressure, so reducing hypertension, again, another risk factor for dementia. Exercise is also useful in terms of regulating high cholesterol and blood glucose, and these likewise link into being risk factors for dementia. And the risks for heart attack and stroke are the same, and they also involve deficits in blood flow to your brain or to your heart, and exercise here again is very positive in terms of reducing your cardiovascular risk for heart attack and stroke. So moving quickly on then to the musculoskeletal system. So this is the scaffolding for function. So it's our skeleton, our muscles, our ligaments, our joints. And we need all of these to be in reasonable order, like to have our bodies going, just the way we need to have our car in good structural order to keep going. But as we do age, we do get potential problems with joint stiffness and with pain, arthritis, muscle weakness. And falls and fractures are, again, major events in somebody's life which can have detrimental effects on their cognition. So we do need to keep the structure of our body in the best order that we can as well. I want to give a special mention for muscle, this being the largest organ in the body. It's responsible for our strength, our endurance, our power, and our overall fitness. But because it is an organ, it also is involved in metabolism, and it has a really key role in metabolizing glucose and blood sugars. So it has a really positive effect then in relation to controlling the development of type 2 diabetes, which again is linking back into, I suppose, the structure and function of your brain and the prevention of dementia. And the picture on the left-hand side, the top one is a cross-section of the thigh muscles. of an athlete, or I think it's a 40-year-old who's active and is sort of athletic. And then the middle one is of an older person who actually doesn't do any exercise. And then the bottom one, we have a triathlete who's in their 70s, so somebody who's very physically active as well. So you can see that with physical activity and with exercise, we can actually keep the structure and integrity of our muscles better as well. So the middle one has more fat and it has less sort of muscle tissue. But if we are actually strengthening our muscles, then we can actually keep them in good order and it will function all better for us. Then the next, I suppose, part of the body that again has implications for, I suppose, our overall body integrity and also potentially for our brain health as well, because we don't want to end up with a fracture and we don't want to end up in hospital. And this is again our bone mass. And we know as we age, there is a decrease in bone mass with age in both men and women. And sometimes men think that they don't get osteoporosis, but they do. So prevention of falls and fracture and being, when you're at the GP, actually asking about, what your bone health is really important as well. And exercise here also has a really important role in relation to the prevention of falling, but also in relation to the integrity and the strength of your bones. So there are particular kinds of exercise using resistance bands or using weights and also impact exercise that really is important for prevention of falls and fracture. And then also some other, I suppose, key considerations would be your balance, your reaction time, your coordination, your speed, and your agility. And here, again, is another area where exercise can be really useful because you do have to use your concentration. Say if you were going to a dance class, you have to learn these steps. So you're challenging not only your physical capacity, but also your mental capacities as well. So activities like that actually challenge you both physically and also mentally are really good for improving your overall structure of your body and also for the function of your brain. There is evidence as well that exercise helps people's mood, reduces depression. It's also really a fantastic way of getting social interaction. People get involved in some kind of social activities. Exercise for weight control. It also can help with sleep. It gives sometimes routine and purpose. So again, if you can get involved in something that's structured and you know you have to be there on Tuesday morning at 8 o'clock, or else people are going to notice that you're not there. That is again another way of kind of motivating yourself to get on with exercise. And also there's a sense of mastery and self-confidence and esteem. And we heard Ian talk earlier about kind of losing confidence. So I think feeling that that your body is, is strong, that it's able to do what you need to do. That's again a very important thing for our capacity to get out there and to interact with life. I just want to skip over these two just for in the sense of keeping us on time and leaving time for questions. But I just want to follow up, I suppose, on Tim's talk as well about how active we are as a nation. And to be honest, we're not that great. I think he showed that 50 to 60% of people didn't actually take physical activity. So these are national statistics, and you can see the graph as it's going down as people are getting older. So these are the percentages that kind of meet the physical activity requirements by age. So there is a temptation, I think, as we move into middle age and onward, that we become less physically active as well. So I suppose I'm putting it up to everybody to think about that when you get home again. So that then brings me to the physical activity guidelines. And these are the same worldwide. So the Department of Health here and the HSC, they have all of this information on their website. And you can see in the Alzheimer's Society as well, the guidelines are there in the leaflets. And it really is about trying to do something consistently. So 30 minutes of exercise 5 times a week of moderate physical activity. So that is getting your heart rate up a little bit, getting your breathing rate up, but you can still have a conversation. So brisk walking, bit of social dancing. If you are more physically capable and you can get to go into vigorous activities, then you need maybe a little bit of a less dose. But if you can think about that 5 days a week, you need to be out and about and doing something for 30 minutes a day. One other thing to include is actually to think about making some resistance exercise, so building your strength. And I just want to move on now and I suppose show you where in Dunleary found you might be able to get some help with that. This slide was really about just saying that every move counts. So even a little bit is better than nothing. So where would we go to be able to access some of these help in relation to some of these physical fitness or physical activity activities? And before we go there, I just want to, I suppose, give people just one voice, of safety. So I suppose if you already have a health condition, you might want to talk to your GP. So that'll be your first port of call. So if you have heart disease, you have high blood pressure, dizziness, unsteadiness, or you have a hip or a joint problem that you think might be aggravated by exercise, then to get some advice from your GP. But really it is about starting slow and taking things at your own pace. Motivation, Tim talked about as well, that's really important. So if you can get a buddy, a family or a friend, join a club, get involved with some kind of community group, and pick something that you enjoy and set some goals to kind of make sure that you sort of keep yourself on track, because it is difficult. And I suppose I can't emphasize enough about, I suppose, making things social and fun. So this slide then really is just about where to get some advice. So the GP I've mentioned already, and they might be able to refer you to physiotherapy if that's within the sort of local services. But one resource I want to show you here in Dún Laoghaire are the DLR leisure centres. And in UCD, we actually have some of our physio students out in the Loughlinstown Centre. So we're trying to make sure that we bridge that gap between educating our healthcare professionals and bringing them out into the community gyms as well. So here in Dún Laoghaire, there are gyms at Meadowbrook, Muggstown and Loughlinstown. And so they're scattered pretty well over kind of a good catchment area. They have fantastic facilities and they have fantastic instructors. And there are all sorts of activities there, from aquarobics to beginners classes, to some resistance exercise, but also cardiovascular exercise. And they offer over 100 classes per week on land only, let alone, I suppose, what's available in the water. So I really would encourage you to have a look and see, would you put your head in the door, talk to somebody there and see if they could help you. So you don't have to be an athlete, you don't have to be 20, you don't have to have running gear, you don't even have to have the shoes to go in there and actually sort of talk to people, and they will help you with that. And there are classes for people of all ages and all capabilities. And then one other thing just to mention to you is XWell Medical. So these are classes for people with health conditions, and you do need a referral from your healthcare practitioner, but there also is one of these in Loughlinstown, in the DLR gym in Loughlinstown. And there's groups of people exercising there a couple of times a week. It's a group-based class with circuit, and again, it's supervised, and you can get a lot of help from the individuals there from that. And you can find them on the website, or actually I think on the DLR website also. So my take-home messages really are about, first of all, reducing your sitting time. Try and think about building physical activity into your day. Even 10 minutes is a good start, but you need to be thinking about trying to get that up to 30 minutes 5 times a week. And also then to not be afraid to ask for help and to sort of walk through the door of the facilities that are here. So finally, just to bring it back to my analogy, so some of us might be a Ferrari, some of us might be a vintage car, some of us might be a Mini. We're all different, we've all different capacities, but we're all made from the same materials. And really exercise is essential to keep the engine running, to keep the fuel lines clear and the electrics connected, and to keep, I suppose, the car on the road. So if that doesn't, I suppose, convince you that exercise is medicine, I'll have to come back again.